Welcome to Five or Flop, a podcast for the best and worst historical fiction has to offer. I'm your host, Erin.
And I'm Grace, and each week we'll be reading a different historical fiction book to see if they're a five or a flop.
Our theme for season 5 is family and friends, so our family and friends are picking what we're reading, and I'm super excited to introduce or reintroduce our first returning guest of the season. So, guest, would you care to introduce yourself and the book we're reading and why you picked the book?
Sure, yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Diana, and the book we're reading is The Dance Tree. And I suggested a few, and I'll get more into this later, but I was really back and forth on this one and whether to include it in my list of recommendations.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I had complicated feelings about it, but I didn't remember which complicated feelings I had. But ultimately, I was like, I think this is going to be something that will be right up Grace and Erin's alleys.
Perfect.
You know, that you would find it interesting, even if it wasn't a 5 for you, you'd find it tasty. And so I was like, I gotta include it. And when you picked it, I was like, oh yeah, I thought so.
Okay, so you read it before.
Yes.
About how long had it been since you had read it before?
I think it was last year. Let me check my Storygraph history.
That's the best thing about Storygraph.
Yeah.
We all know exactly what we were reading and when.
And
Wow.
while Diana checks that, for anyone who may have forgotten, Diana was previously a guest host in season 3 on the Magic Treehouse books, where I believe she had famously read all of them or almost all of them.
Yeah, I had read all of them up to that point, and then a few more, and then also her memoir.
She has a memoir?
A very short one.
Is it for kids or is it just short?
I don't remember the details. I think probably older kids could read it or adults. I think it
accessible
was
for
kid-ish,
kids, yeah.
but
Understood.
not, I don't know, baby's first memoir. But I was joking to Erin that I apparently can only come on for tree-themed books.
It's true.
Yeah.
Although this one's a little bit different in tone.
Oh, I would say. Imagine if the Magic Treehouse had taken them to the dance tree.
Yeah.
They would not have enjoyed it there. They would not have had fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what's been new with y'all lately?
Well, Erin, I think you need to talk about what's new with you because it has to do with where we're filming today.
I think I do need to talk about what's new for us. So, and for us, I mean me and Santiago. So we are filming at our apartment today, and I am so pleased to announce that we finally have our brand new couch that we spent $2,600 on and had to wait 2 months for it to be constructed in North Carolina. And it's finally here. And it is so nice not to be sinking into a broken couch as we're filming this anymore.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's been a very long time coming. Our couch has been broken probably since early spring, and we're filming this mid-September. It's been a time. Couches are not cheap, and they take forever to get here.
That's true.
But it's worth it. And we also got it as a sectional, so when we do move into a bigger place, we just buy an extra piece for it. And they come and put it in the middle for us. So that's great.
Beautiful.
Okay, well, clearly that was the most exciting thing that's happened lately for anyone. So, Diana, how about you go next?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I just went to Small Press Expo.
What is that?
This past weekend. It's our friend Elizabeth had suggested it to the larger group, and I got to see a panel interview with an author of a comic I used to follow for a really long time, and get her new book, which was exciting, and then go to a bunch of really other interesting panels, and then also buy about 15 zines.
Oh my God.
But it was fun. You know, it was a really good time.
Very neat.
So, yeah, and they even had some people come in from, like, Estonia and Spain.
Oh my
and,
gosh.
Wow.
Yeah, and Latvia. It was super interesting.
I love that. Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's, okay, maybe that's a little more cool than my new couch, but that's okay.
No, I mean,
Different ways.
Different ways.
Yeah.
Different experiences.
I mean, that just goes to show how much the medium has become more popular. Because
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that 20 years ago, it would have been like, all right, loser.
Like, yeah,
you went
like
to go look at comics all weekend. But
a
it was
weirdo
great.
convention.
And I got these phenomenal prints. It was great. It was
Ooh,
super
good.
exciting.
Oh, I'm so glad. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You are always doing the most random, interesting things. Like, every time I see you, you're like, I just went to this random place and had this experience. And it's never what I'm expecting it to be. Grace, I know exactly what you've been up to lately.
Yes. So, data scientist Ashley and I have been watching White Collar, the TV show starring Matt Bomer, famous guest host on Glee.
Also, famously, wasn't he Fellow Travelers?
Yes, of the Fellow Travelers TV show.
Who was he on Glee?
That Fellow Travelers.
He was Darren Chris's brother.
Yeah.
Sorry, he was Blaine's brother.
please.
And they sang somebody that I used to know.
And they sang the mashup,
Hungry Like a Wolf.
Yes, and Rio.
And Rio.
Okay.
Yeah.
The entire time in the Fellow Travelers episode, you were like, they need someone hot to play this guy. They cast him because he was hot. I was just sitting here like, no idea who he was.
But really hot, right?
Yes, now that I have clarification. Okay, Thank you. Please continue.
So we've been watching it for probably like 2 years, and it's 6 seasons, and the whole time we've been like, season 6, because it was going to get canceled. Season 6 was only 6 episodes. So we're like, we'll go to Bottomless Brunch, get kind of drunk, and then come back and watch all of it in one day. It took us forever to get there because, to be honest, season 5 is really bad. So we just didn't want to get through it. But we finally did, which is great because it's getting taken off Netflix. By the time you're listening to this episode, it has been taken off Netflix. So we are in under the wire like 2 weeks ahead of time. And we made it. We made it happen, and I'm very proud.
Is that the show also with Zach Morris? No, he's in, I just pulled up his bio. Franklin and Bash.
That's not that famous. I don't know what that is.
He's in something, I don't know. My mom and sister used to watch him in something.
Zach who?
Zach Morris from Saved by the Bell. That's not the actor's name.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Anyways.
I'm not familiar with Saved by the Bell.
But yeah. Crazy. Love Saved by the Bell. Anyways. That's a disturbing fact about you.
So yeah, now data scientist Ashley and I can move on to our next TV show. Which
Saved by the Bell.
Which is going to be season 2 of Interview with a Vampire.
Oh!
We watched season 1 forever ago.
Did y'all still live in the old house when you watched it?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think we watched part of it together.
We watched part of it together, and also it was removed. Either it was removed or we lost access to the streaming platform it was on.
Mm-hmm.
And Santiago had to help us by sourcing a couple of the episodes from an alternate location. But yeah, so that was like 2 years ago, and so now we can watch the second season because we finished White Collar.
Well, that's great. I'm very happy for you.
Yeah. What are we all reading? It seems like we're all, you have your couch to read on. Diana, you have some new comics to read. What are we all reading?
I am just on my podcast grind. I don't want to say unfortunately because I don't think that's fair because I enjoy reading podcast books. But
it's unfortunate because you have nothing to talk about.
Unfortunately, I can't give away which pod book I am reading. However, it is one I am not surprised I don't like. So if you want to try to glean from the Storygraph Reading Challenge.
I was going to say, we have such interesting rules about when or we will or won't bring up the pod books because we published the full list. Anyone can go see what books there are.
It really is so dumb, but we are very rigid in this. Although I will say I finally got Jurassic Park off hold at the library. So I'm very excited to be reading that soon. It's not going to be the next, I'm eyeballing my stack of library books right now. It is not going to be the next one I read, but it is going to be soon. So I'm very excited.
Fantastic.
Nice.
What about you, Grace?
I just finished a book yesterday called A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping. It's like a super big like tweed trend right now is like cozy, like fantasy witch books.
And as someone who only wore tweed in high school, you might think I read a lot of these, but I actually didn't know that was a trend right now.
It absolutely is. I've read a couple of them. I've read a couple that aren't that good. You can tell those are the people that are hopping on it because it's a trend and they don't feel it in their heart. But I think this is a one from a lady who feels it in her heart. It was good, not great, but again, it's just like it gives you a vibe. I can read it in front of my 12-hour YouTube video of the fire, and it was fine.
Sometimes interrupted with these horrific ads of dead babies.
Yeah. Well, now they've started to do ads for vapes are being imported from China and they're destroying the brains of American children. That's the current YouTube ad.
I mean, I don't know if I disagree with that, though. I don't know factually if they are being imported from China.
That's the thing. It's like, I agree that the vapes are destroying the brains of the children, but I don't think that businessmen in China are sitting there being like, how can we bring down America? I know. We'll send vapes to children.
I don't agree with that part. However.
So it's 50-50.
Yeah, mixed bag. Yeah. Diana, what are you reading? You're usually reading like 7 books at a time.
Yeah, per usual, reading multiple books at a time. Just finished this phenomenal novella called Cold Enough for Snow that by Jessica Au, that I just pulled up so that I don't know, finished it for kicks. And then it was one of my first 5s in a really long time.
Ooh.
Phenomenal. Really good. Highly recommend, although not historical. Sorry. And then I brought this for fun so that I could show. I did get a book
Ooh.
from Ngozi Ukazu, the author I mentioned, and at Small Press Expo. And she signed it for me, and she did a little doodle
Goodness.
of her main character.
Oh, it's so cute.
Which I thought was very cute and fun.
This is when we need something my work will not stop calling a vodcast, a video podcast,
Yes.
so we can show the audience.
Perhaps we could take a picture and put it on our Instagram.
You
That would be good. I think we've said we would do that multiple times, and we've never done it. This could be the time.
Well, I said perhaps, so that really covers us from a legal perspective.
Yeah. And then a lot of poetry from Ada Limon, which I picked up from the National Book Festival, which was 2 whole weeks ago now. So
at the time of
Old
recording,
news.
not at the time of publication.
A mystery number of weeks. Who knows?
Exactly.
But yeah, so going through those.
Well, that's awesome.
well.
I feel like Grace and I don't necessarily read a lot of poetry, and we haven't had a lot of guest hosts. I'm curious to see maybe that'll change this season, but I always love when someone brings up poetry. It's not the most common on our pod, at least.
Now that we've talked about what we're up to and what we're reading, Erin, would you like to read the synopsis for The Dance Tree by Kiran Millwood Hargrave?
I would love to. Strasbourg, 1518. In the midst of a blisteringly hot summer, a lone woman begins to dance in the city square. She dances for days without pause or rest, and when hundreds of other women join her, the men running the city declare a state of emergency and hire musicians to play the devil out of the mob. Outside the city, pregnant Lisbeth lives with her husband and mother-in-law, tending the bees out of the family's livelihood. Though Lisbeth is removed from the frenzy of the dancing plague affecting the city's women, her own quiet life is upended by the arrival of her sister-in-law. Nettie has been away for 7 years, serving a penance in the mountains for a crime no one will name. It is a secret Lisbeth is determined to uncover. As the city buckles under the beat of 1,000 feet, Lisbeth becomes caught in a dangerous web of deceit and clandestine passion. Like the women of Strasbourg, she too is dancing to a dangerous tune. I have to say, I really like the synopsis. I hate the beat of 1,000 feet. It does not fit with the tone of the rest of that.
I like dancing a dangerous tune.
I did like that. But overall, good synopsis. I like that we've started adding into the pod when something has a good synopsis or not. So.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Kiran Millwood Hargrave. So Kiran is a British author of more than a dozen books for children, YA, and adults. Her debut book for adults, The Mercies, was subject to a 13-way auction.
That's crazy.
Wow.
Won a Betty Trask Award, which is a first novel written by an author under 35. I think this is first novel for adults, although I didn't clarify because I believe she had children's and YA out before this.
Okay.
And this book was also named a New York Times Most Notable Book of 2020. She has a third book for adults, Almost Life, set to publish this upcoming March.
I'm Googling The Mercies because I haven't read it, but I feel like if I see the cover, maybe I'll know what it is.
Yeah, I'm going to do the same because it sounds familiar.
Okay. I lied. I have not heard of this before. But maybe I'll read it.
It is also historical fiction. It's witch trials.
Ooh. Okay.
Perhaps,
Kiran has an era.
Perhaps upcoming pod. We'll see. Not this season, though.
Well, I had never heard of Kiran Millwood Hargrave before, and I had not read any of her other books. Had either of you, Diana? Obviously, you read The Dance Tree.
Yeah, this was the only one. I think I had originally read it because I was in a Storygraph challenge, and I saw it recommended for one of the prompts. I did check, and I read it almost exactly a year ago, on like September 1st of 2024.
So this is a fall book.
Yeah, I think so. Which is funny because it happens in the summer. But
I think it's appropriate this episode is coming out in October.
yeah, so I also was not familiar with her.
I was not either. Surprisingly had not heard of this or I guess The Mercies either. All right, anyways, our judgments come based on the book and characters within the book rather than any real historical figures they may have been based on, and spoilers ahead. Where do we want to start?
Well, I'll dive in. Let's not leave the listeners in suspense. I really liked this book. I thought it was great.
I had a great time reading this.
Yeah. I think that this did something that I didn't expect it to do, because at first I just knew when we were putting the list together, oh, this is a book about the dancing plague.
Which I was in. I think I was the one who made the call of Diana's suggestions for that because I'm like, this is fun to me.
And it is fun, and I won't argue that it isn't.
The dancing plague is almost in the background. Like, it's
Yeah.
set against it.
It's like, here's how this twisting, turning event has affected the thing that's going on in my life right now.
And it's actually so funny that you mentioned the Hamnet movie, because something about the writing style or the characters, something reminded me of Hamnet a lot in this. And I feel like it's almost, Hamnet was kind of set against the backdrop of Shakespeare.
Yeah.
And then this was like set against the backdrop of this big historical event, focusing on the very personal stories of women in these situations.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. It was similar to me.
Yeah, I think it was interesting to me how it is this very personal story, and she includes these very personal snippets from other women as well, which I'm sure we'll get more into later. But at the same time, she really definitely weaves that into discussions about gender and race that are both relevant to the historical period in a way I don't think I always see with historical fiction that tries to discuss those things, and to things that we see in our time period.
I think those elements are woven in really, really well, too. I think that's a strong suit. And I do have some weaknesses in this book that I'm going to call out later on at the end. Like Lisbeth's journey and her, I won't say it's the most like obvious like character growth we've had on the pod, but I think her growth in like learning more about kind of these interweaving threads in her society and in her life is really powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not that she changes so much as a person, but she just kind of gets the ability to enact what she already had inside of her.
Should we go a little bit into the plot?
Yes.
So this is a book that could have very easily been last season, Reading Rainbow. To me, it was very obvious that this was going to be gay.
I did not know going in, and then I found out somehow. Maybe I was looking at like review.
No, it's because I went to go mark it as currently reading on Storygraph, and then I saw in one of the tags that it was marked as LGBTQ. So then I was like, oh my god, no, a spoiler! But then I started reading, and I was like, oh, this is very much obvious.
I did think it was interesting, though, that I think from the synopsis and from also seeing it in the tags, I had assumed it was going to be the usual thing of like, oh, the female lead,
Yes.
she's going to fall for the sister. She doesn't. Yes.
Crazy
Yeah.
herself, right?
Yeah, the sister-in-law.
So essentially kind of the plot of this book is as the dancing plague is picking up, and I think we'll discuss in historical accuracy, but just a brief overview for anyone who is unfamiliar. This is when people just randomly started dancing for weeks on end in Strasbourg, amongst other places in Europe, not at the same time, but this has occurred throughout history. Strasbourg was the most notable example of this. But as that is happening in the backdrop, Nettie returns from 7 years at a nunnery, for some crime that doing penance for some crime. Lisbeth's husband is trying to save their bees from the church. That was one of my weaknesses. I didn't really understand that whole plot there. But Lisbeth is there, and then she has her friend Ida, who is married to the evil churchman who's kind of running the town.
Yes.
So Nettie comes back, and it's discovered that Nettie and Ida had been in a romantic and sexual relationship with each other. That was the crime. And then as that is happening, I'm not explaining this very clearly, but as that is happening, the dancing plague is going on. So the town calls in musicians to perform, and it's like, okay, well, you have to house them in your house. And you know how the Constitution is you can't quarter you don't have to quarter soldiers.
You have to quarter musicians.
It's like
Strasbourg.
Get the Constitution in there immediately for that.
But some of them are hot.
Hot. So it's fine because Lisbeth strikes up with this man whose name might be pronounced Aaron, but notably, he is Turkish. And they are not
bad.
Yeah. So all of this is going on, and it kind of tensions are coming to a head.
That's that.
That's that. And I mean,
read more to find out.
Yeah. No.
Oh, and also crucially, Lisbeth is 7 months pregnant.
Yes.
Yeah. And she has had 12 miscarriages before this.
And so the dance tree is kind of a dual symbolism here because you have the people dancing in the center of town. Kind of they build platforms in the trees. Mm-hmm. So you might think that's the dance tree.
But no,
it is referring to the tree where Lisbeth goes, and kind of in like a quasi-pagan practice, she ties ribbons to remember each of her children that she's lost. And it's really heart-wrenchingly sad.
especially because like at that time, no one else thinks of those losses as children. And also they basically think that it's Lisbeth's fault for not being able to bear children.
Yes.
So until Netha comes back from the nunnery, she's the only one carrying that sorrow like all by herself.
Mm-hmm.
And so we also have this element of the tension of she's 7 months pregnant through the whole book, or like at the beginning of the book, then time passes and she gets more pregnant. But she has this anxiety the whole time of like, I've never been this pregnant before. Like something will probably still happen though.
And I am happy to show that she does successfully have a child at the end of the book.
Yes. But not everyone lives to the end of the book.
No. So she has her best friend Ida, who is the woman who's in a relationship with Nettie. And then do they both get arrested? Nettie escapes, Ida gets arrested.
They basically, in the end, or not in the end, in the beginning of the book, when the backstory is revealed, they basically they're caught and they both have a choice on how to face being caught. Netha chooses to go off and do penance in the nunnery. Ida chooses the safer choice, which is marriage to a man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So they both have
marriage
this,
to the man who caught them.
Yeah, who is evil.
It's honestly kind of crazy what their original plan was, because the plan was for Nettie to marry that guy and Ida to marry Nettie's brother, who is now Lisbeth's husband, so they could still stay
like
together.
A quad.
Which is, it could have worked if they hadn't been caught.
It could have. Yeah. It could have. But yeah, so it's very interesting. Those two characters, their relationship is very present in the book, but you're not in their heads.
Yeah.
So you only know, there's only so much that you know about them and their relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But you do get the sense there's an interesting dynamic there of how they both chose to handle it, and if one of them, if they hold it against each other, if they don't. I don't even think necessarily we needed more of this because there was already a lot going on in this book, but that was an interesting element that I enjoyed having played with a little bit.
And I liked not being in their heads for it.
I agree. Yeah.
But towards the end, they kind of get caught again. So that's what I believe Nettie...
their relationship.
Yes. And Nettie runs away and escapes. Ida is caught, and she's going to be, like, instantly drowned and killed.
Yes.
So then, shall I just kind of give spoilers to the whole book, and then we go back and talk about the details?
Let's go.
So then one of the guards, who is in a queer relationship with the other musician staying with Lisbeth, he is like, well, I can't help you escape, but here's this poppy so you won't feel any pain. So you can drug yourself and not feel pain when you die. Except she takes all the poppy, and then all the dancers start freeing all the prisoners, and she still dies.
It was very sad.
Overdose. It was very sad because it's like she could have made it.
And then at the end, when Netha's like, she just died and I don't know why, Lisbeth's like, well, I know why, but I'm not going to tell you because it will bum you out. Basically. Yeah. She's like, I will keep it a secret from her because it's not going to make her feel better to know like just how close she came to having Ida back.
Yeah. All in all, a bittersweet ending.
Bittersweet, I will say, for sure.
Well, and the other thing is, no one else dies. Ida is the only death.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
the evil husband.
Oh, the evil husband dies.
Wait, I forgot about that.
Yes, Lisbeth,
critically.
Lisbeth kills him, but Aaron takes the blame.
Lisbeth stabs him with Aaron's knife. And because Aaron is already viewed as being, because he's Turkish, there's already all this bias against him, and all of the musicians are already being thrown out of town. He kind of takes the fall, and I think the husband also sort of is willing to let him take the fall in order to sort of get things back to normalcy once he returns. So he's on the run, even though it was Lisbeth who killed him.
There's this, since you mentioned the husband and his return, there is this like little thread at the end about where Lisbeth's like, this baby is like my baby, my child, and then the husband comes in and is immediately like, I don't remember the husband's name, but he's like Henna. We'll name him Henna Jr. It just immediately reclaims that, and it's just like this also sad journey about it's this other sad journey of like being a woman in society, and just having no ownership. Like the blame is placed on her for the miscarriages, but when she has a child, it's not her child, it's her husband's child.
Well, it's like that the people at the end, the people who are left in the family will go along happily enough. Lisbeth is still married to Henna, who is not like cartoonishly evil, but has demonstrated a lot of these negative qualities that your just kind of average husband might have. But she has Netha as an ally and a friend in the house. Like, they developed a good relationship. She has her son, but then Ida's gone and is not going to come back. And she's never going to see Aaron again either. And they had fallen in love. So really, like, the message at the end is, things can turn out okay. But if you're gay or if you're not white, you're like, there's not hope for you really in this book. Like, there's nothing represented there. And I kind of thought, like, at the end, Aaron basically runs into the woods and is never to be seen again. And that's a really harsh ending for, like, what amounts to, I think, like, the nicest and most generous character in the book.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So that was very realistic, but definitely a big bummer.
Yeah. And I think it was, I don't know. When I was reading it, I think I had thought about this the first time I read it, and then I was reminded of it the second time. I think the ending kind of reminded me of that one tweet where it's like, when things are really hard, I have to remind myself that plenty of people lived decent and fulfilling lives during the fall of the Roman Empire. I feel like it kind of has that vibe where it's like things are pretty bad. But I think she has a moving moment where she looks at Ida's children, who she's now helping, and also her own child, and is like, wow, this is like a little miracle, even though this is in such a horrible time where, they say there's been this comet that's damned the century. But in the middle of it, there are these small joys of, having gotten to meet Aaron at all, and having this child after 12 miscarriages, and having developed this wonderful friendship with her sister-in-law, who I will say, the whole time I was reading the book, I did think her name was pronounced Agneeth.
Well, we all have it,
but
for the listeners' benefit, Agneethe.
Yeah.
Which
But who can say?
differently now, which is fine.
Neath, Netha.
It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. And I think that also tied into one thing that I found interesting about the book, which is that in a lot of ways it reminded me more of some of the either apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic fiction I've read than some of the historical fiction I've read. Like, it really reminded me of parts of Parable of the Sower, or this isn't apocalyptic, but Salvage the Bones, which is about Katrina.
Yeah.
Yes, and the way that the prose was and the way it described the world of, poverty in that situation of climate destruction versus sort of a similarly hot, destructive, things raining from the sky that they don't understand, a general sense of doom in a way that I thought was interesting, where I felt like it really felt like to them this was sort of the end of the world, or that the end of the world had started with this comet and was sort of continuing. And I think that Lisbeth especially felt that way, although some of that was, of course, her personal feelings about being blamed for a great deal of things her whole life.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, and I think it's really interesting that, at a time where we know history continues on after, it's a funny parallel for us recording this now in a moment in time that does not feel great in many different ways living in America, and in many senses feels like it could be the beginning of some sort of end, but could also be the beginning of drastic change in ways we don't even know. So it's an interesting parallel to look back on someone in a completely different point of time in history.
And you get that sense in the book, like, all of these things are stacking on top of each other. First, you have this comet that's like the harbinger of evil. Then you have this oppressive heat. Like, they keep making a point of how hot the summer is. And then the dancing plague comes. It's all of these things stacked on top of each other.
Yeah, and this is something I will come back to for sure in historical accuracy, but like how all these things fed into the dancing plague itself and what that sort of represents and what that could have meant. It's interesting. It does feel very apocalyptic in a very normal setting.
Yeah.
Diana, you have many great notes on our script document, and I want to definitely pull on two in a specific order, though. First, let's talk about the book structurally, because you have a note here about how this book is kind of structured. So it's primarily chapters about Lisbeth and her experiences, and then every once in a while you get 1 to 2 pages of women's stories, how they got into dancing. So the book actually opens with the first woman who started dancing.
And I think that's a really great and crucial way to begin the book.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Definitely.
And then as you go, you get these little kind of like snippets or vignettes as you go that kind of tells you why these different women are getting involved for very different reasons.
And some of them are kind of outlandish. Like there's one woman who is coming from like a religious cult, basically. But most of them are for really typical reasons, things that we probably have met women that have gone through these things, like a bad marriage, being abandoned by someone, losing a child, the death of a parent, like something that is really normal, but just in the right set of circumstances and in a specific person can really set them on a path they can't come back from.
Mm-hmm. And Diana, tell us about your experiences with this, having read the book twice.
I mean, I found it super compelling. I had forgotten that the first time I read this, I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it. And then I think I read the whole thing in one day. And then when I did my reread, I also read the whole thing in a matter of hours. Mm-hmm. Because I think that structurally, just going from these perspectives of things getting a little more heightened with Lisbeth's story, mm-hmm. and then jumping to the reminder of, at first it's no one's dancing and this one person starts it, and then it's one person dancing and more join her, mm-hmm. and then it's 50 women dancing and more join, and then it's a couple hundred, and so it kind of, only 1 or 2 pages every time, but it really builds the tension, and it really keeps you wanting to go more, further into the book and just keep reading. And so it really incentivized me both times to read the book way faster than I planned.
Yeah, no, and God knows I love a short little chapter thrown in there too. Mm-hmm. It breaks it up. I also read this book very quickly. I will say the first time is that very first opening of the book. I did think she was going to be the main character. I was thrown off when
I had to go back and check the flap too, because I'm like, I thought the main character's name was Lisbeth.
I got very thrown off. But then as soon as I got past that, I'm like, this was a really good opening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's interesting also how it's kind of a glimpse into the fact that every one of these women is living lives a little bit similar in ways to Lisbeth and the other women that we hear more into, where we only see mm-hmm. a page or two with them, but each of them, you could tell the same story about their lives and the difficulties they've faced.
Absolutely.
And I think Kiran Millwood Hargrave does something really smart to draw that connection, which is later in the book, towards the tail end of it, she connects those brief sections of those dancing women with Lisbeth. When Lisbeth goes in to see the dancers and she finds a bracelet on the ground of one of the women that we had read about before. Mm-hmm. And that's the only connection, but it makes those 2 sections feel like they're not happening in completely separate worlds.
Yeah. They came together very, very nicely.
Mm-hmm. And it's especially gut-wrenching when I think the last of the short chapters is when we see Neith or Nethi in the truck on the way to be purified from the dancing curse, and she's slowly starting to wake up from it, and she sees Ida with her eyes, very bright from the poppy, and her breath starting to still, and we don't necessarily know fully what happens mm-hmm. until later on in the chapters after that, but then it gets recontextualized as, oh my gosh, that's the moment where she started to come back to herself from the mania, and Ida, dies in her arms.
Yeah.
And so now it's a reminder that, this character that we've spent more time with became one of those women, and all of those women were also like mm-hmm. our women, our characters.
Yes. It kind of makes it
gut-wrenching.
Yeah, gut-wrenching is a great word for it. But since you mentioned Nettie and Ida, you have another interesting point comparing them to a previous pod couple that I would love to talk about with you.
Ooh, yeah. I will say, I think another thing that I went back and forth about, but I fundamentally did really appreciate about the book was that I think that sometimes in books where the author is both trying to tell a historical story and saying something about the current day, sometimes it gets a little heavy-handed, or a little bit inauthentic to the time period, where it's kind of that typical. I don't recall if they do it in Bridgerton, but the sort of I hate this corset, all women at the time.
The sister in Bridgerton who we can't stand.
Oh, Eloise.
Miss Bannings. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Or like in, I thought Anne with an E was fun, but where it's like they're talking about things in ways that you could have made authentic to their time period, but you're using such modern language. Like when Millie Bobby Brown was in that mystery movie.
Oh, what? Enola Holmes?
Yes, Enola Holmes. And it was so inauthentic to the time
period.
Like
Sherlock Holmes' niece or something.
Is this before or after she hit a gay person with her car?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, but she was talking about it as though she was on Girls or something.
Oh, weird.
Just very inauthentic. And I think that there were times when I was like, oh gosh, we're about to get into that sort of thing, which I always find aggravating, and it really takes me out of the moment. I think that speaking of past books, one of the things I had a really hard time with Gwen and Art Are Not in Love was that I felt like they did jump a lot into this. Like I think y'all had mentioned they did a Riverdale reference at one time.
Oh my god!
Like, oh gosh, please!
Oh, the chess game, the highs and lows of American football. Yeah. Playing chess.
I was like, please don't. In a way that I don't know, and the way they ended it just in general. I mean, I think you had some wiggle room there in that it was based off of potentially fantasy. We don't know for sure.
In that I had fun listening to the audiobook.
Yeah, but it was
yes.
No,
you're completely right.
It didn't feel true to the time period. And I think that there were some cases there where it felt like it might be leaning into that sort of like, I don't know, girl boss language. Yes. I hate to say it like that.
You mean the dance tree?
The dance tree. But then it would really move away from that. Like I think there was a moment when Lisbeth confronts when she catches Agnethe and Ida, and she is all oh my gosh, shocked, sin, but mostly she's upset in her heart about Ida not having told her for 7 years, and Nettie kind of goes on this speech about how it's about women and stuff like that, but I think it does still feel very centered in actual critiques of the time, where I did think it was very interesting that it wasn't that Lisbeth was some unique modern woman that got copy pasted into the end of the medieval era, early modern period. It was more that her the reason why she ultimately became okay with everything was because it was in this moment in time where paganism was not necessarily practiced anymore, but there were still a lot of relics of it, and like the dancing tree that she had heard about from her mother. And so when Nettie's like, well, you don't really believe that this is a sin, because if you did, you wouldn't be doing this with the tree either. It is a reminder that, people still had a lot of differing beliefs. And I did appreciate that it felt like her concerns and everyone else's concerns, and also the ways in which they were supportive, were still very rooted in the time that they were in. It didn't look exactly like it would if you were to try and set this story in 2020.
Yeah. And that's very tied into the presence of the church, specifically, like in their town.
Just overwhelming.
Like, that part is not downplayed at all. It's very central.
Yeah, the church is everyone's whole life almost. It affects everything.
This might be a good place to get into some of the issues I had with this book.
Sure.
There weren't many, but I think some of the language you had been talking about, where it was like almost felt like too modern, to like hashtag girl boss, which I noticed that more and more with books I read.
And see, that's so interesting that you guys are saying that, because I didn't think that at all.
Really,
I didn't pick up on that at all.
And that's why we have multiple people on here with their different reading experiences, because something that we may feel it strongly. That's like Gwen and Art is a perfect example. I had a lot of fun with that. And you were like, here is every single issue I've had with that book. So it's fun. It invites conversation. But that was one of the qualms I had. Some others I wanted to point out, and I don't think we have to spend a lot of time on them. Grace, you kind of cleared one of them up for me, because I didn't catch that Ida chose not to do penance like Nettie did at the beginning. I didn't realize that she was punished by marrying the guy. So that clears that up. That was on me for missing that detail. One of it being like the church in society, like I fully understand like the church was super, super present, and so, like that is so completely right. But I just like, I guess I didn't understand, and I didn't need the structure of it spoon fed to me, but I needed like a little bit more, like especially with the claiming of the bees, like that didn't really.
I see what you mean, especially because it's been a little bit now, so I don't quite remember. But the evil husband, who's a member of the church council that runs the town, it's called like the 21 or something. Mm-hmm. Is that the right number?
No,
yes.
It's a number.
I think so.
I thought it was the 12. It's a number.
It's one of those numbers.
It's a certain number of councilmen.
Maybe the 12. Yeah. I don't know.
I think it's the 21.
Okay. Well, then they keep just saying, oh, the 21, blah, blah, blah. But they don't ever explain what that means.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, this evil husband, like, he's not a priest. He has the power, like, I guess, given to him by the church. So, yeah, like, I didn't need more on that necessarily, but it wouldn't have hurt to have more information on how that worked exactly.
Is it weird to say that I think I kind of liked that? I felt like it felt authentic to me that this time there were a lot of people who were very deeply impacted by the choices and the power of people they were never going to meet, and that they had almost no, power to impact in turn, that they were, Lisbeth and her husband were not very well off, but they were already much more well off than a lot of the other people. Mm-hmm. And so I think I found it interesting that it was sort of, there's this amorphous power over the larger area. Mm-hmm. And then in addition to that, there's this sort of power hungry guy in their specific town who also has a vendetta against the two of them and the family for personal reasons. And I think they mention at some point with the church that sometimes whether something is blessed or cursed is basically up to what the person making the judgment thinks of you. And I feel like it's kind of like that for me in that partially it was that the church had this dominion over everything, and
so I see your point. It didn't work for me in the book, but I see your point. Build up itself was more of a payoff than the ending, but I mean it is what it is. Overall, overwhelmingly positive for me on this book. I really enjoyed it. I think that feels like the consensus. Here, and maybe a good time to get into historical accuracy. So we'll start with the Dancing Plague in Strasbourg in 1518. So this was part of the Holy Roman Empire at the time. Obviously, the region has had a lot of German and French influences and is now part of France. So the plague did begin with Frau Trophea, excuse me for pronunciation on that, who was the woman who opened the book for us. She was dancing alone for nearly a week, but by August there were over 400 dancers.
And they were not all women. In the book, though, they are all women.
Oh, okay. I had a big question about that, because that was something when I was reading, I was like, oh, I never thought the Dancing Plague was all women, but I wasn't sure if that was artistic license on her part or if it was true and I just didn't know it.
Yes, and we can definitely talk more about this with the star calculator. For me, that was kind of the historical liberties that I'm fine with, a la Hamnet changing how he died, but we can talk about all that later. So, local physicians blamed it on hot blood, which would love to know what that was, and did actually encourage the dancing. As in the book, they built a platform for them to dance on and called in musicians. Don't know if they were forced to quarter them, and don't know if they were hot, Turkish, gay, anywhere in between. We'd like to assume yes, though.
But by the end of September, the town was kind of over it, and many of the dancers were taken to the mountains to pray for absolution. So they're like, okay, let's let God handle this. Let's just kind of
Wrap it up.
yeah, we're over it. So throughout history, there's kind of like still no real reason that was prescribed to this. But one of the likely causes was Saint Vitus superstition, who was a saint believed to have the power to curse people with dancing plague.
That is so specific.
So the Catholic Church has got some crazy
Yeah.
ones there, y'all. They really do. And if I was more in my Catholic days, I could cite some for you, but
Do you think that kid who was named a saint like 2 weeks ago could curse us with dancing plague?
I kind of hope so. But he was like, so actually he did some really cool stuff. If he like kind of digitized like a whole bunch of like religious texts and all of that. So
So that would not be his area.
He would curse us with being chronically online, which we already are.
Okay.
So,
okay.
That's fine. But that was
Reading
combined.
more ebooks.
Yes, literally reading more ebooks. But that was
I don't think I
combined.
can.
That superstition was combined with the horrors of the ongoing disease, famine, heat, everything else. So it's like kind of all these tensions, the reasons why we have been talking about it feeling so apocalyptic, kind of all of that coming to really a head there, and just that superstition amplifying it. So this was the most notable, but not the only dancing plague in Europe. A lot of them did kind of center around St. Vitus's feast day, which kind of, adds more to the theory that it was a lot of superstition regarding him. They're often attributed to divine punishment. Often these plagues are attributed to divine punishment or demonic possessions as well, which is something that's kind of highlighted in this book. That was some of the theories thrown around.
Mm.
Alternatively, I did find a resource that said it might have been attributed to ticklish laughing veins. There was several years after and I'm on a BBC source right now, several years after the incident in Strasbourg, a physician went to kind of figure out what was happening, suggested that a person's, quote, laughing veins could provoke a, quote, ticklish feeling that rose from their limbs to their head, clouding judgment and provoking extreme motion until the frenzied blood was calmed.
I heard a theory also when I was looking things up that some people think it could have been due to a hallucinogenic fungus in some of the breads.
I have heard of that.
Yeah, which I also thought was I feel like my thing overall, not to jump ahead, but that with the historical accuracy was that there were some things where I was like, no, I don't know. And then I looked more into it and I was like, wait, this is referencing this, where, she had mentioned in the first 2 pages that the character who started it all was like, hadn't eaten for days and said, even if there's fungus on it, I'll eat it anyway. So, there were these little references.
Yeah, and I liked that. That carried a lot of strength for me throughout the book.
Or St. Vitus's shrine being specifically mentioned in the book.
Yes, exactly. So I will have to do some more research into St. Vitus. He should have been my confirmation saint, but he was not. That would have been so funny, though.
Yeah.
Anyways, homosexuality at the time. I kind of tried to look. I tried to get as specific to the Holy Roman Empire as possible. However, that was a very vast land mass. So a lot of it is just kind of general to medieval Europe. So this was a crime throughout the Holy Roman Empire, punishable by burning, and both male and female were punishable offenses. It's kind of like ebbed and flowed throughout history, how women's queerness was kind of involved. But at this point in time, it was a punishable offense. So the focus was on acts and not inclination. So it was more like they were less trying to be like, you're gay, and more like, you did this thing. Punish the sin, not the sinner. Yeah.
And there's also this whole element where, like, Elizabeth at first, when she finds out about Ida and Netha, is not really comfortable with it. But they've like, we've done our penance and we've sworn off being physical with each other. We're just in love. And Elizabeth's response to that is like, oh, so this is just like being friends then. Like, that's fine.
Exactly. Friends who really like each other. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, also that they're all equally doomed. Like, it's like no one is free from anything. So
exactly.
Take the joy where you can.
So, although the main punishment was burning, being sent to a convent was a possible outcome for women, especially if they were already seen as like troublemakers, or if they needed to like be separate. if society determined they needed to be separated from their children. It made sense to just sort of handle this and be like, okay, well, you go to a convent and you marry me and we're fine.
Yeah. And it sounded like the convent was pretty bad.
Yeah, it sounded awful. It sounded really abusive.
Yeah.
A la Fingersmith Mental Asylum type of vibes.
Also reminded me of some of the stories of some of the Irish, like women's
the mother
houses.
and baby homes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. I did find a quote from the author, just in a random article I was reading, but I thought it was applicable to add into the section. As with any story, I've learned so much writing the dance trade. It's easy to draw lines from then to now between attitudes to the LGBTQ plus community, to immigrants, to class. We have come so far and not nearly far enough. The power structures we operate under are no longer titled God, but they are still very much in existence. The world at large remains too often a hostile place for people who live, look, or love a different way. I'm glad I was able to offer my characters a safe space. I'm only sorry the outside world found its way in. And I thought that was a really lovely quote.
Yeah.
I also feel like I don't want to let it go by without mention, but I think Kiran Millwood Hargrave put a lot of her own personal experience with infertility into the character of Lisbeth.
Yeah.
So I just think that makes it all the more profound.
Yes, and that was something called out in the author's note as well.
Yeah.
All right.
That's all I got for you.
Well, thank you, Erin. It was fantastic.
I had fun looking at this. It was a very easy one to research, I will say, because there were lots of quick little articles.
People love the dancing plague.
People, as I said, people love stuff in history that is unexplained.
Yeah. And I love looking into it because I feel like it's one of those things where you look back from now and you're like, oh, haha, so silly. And she does really make it kind of dark. You know, she describes them as manic and like puppets and, you know, they're being thrown around by others and bleeding. And it does sort of establish you in the moment and make it feel very serious and real.
Yes. Shall we get to the star calculator?
Let's.
Yeah.
All right. And Diane, I have a section set up for you here. I can fill in your numbers for you if you would like. But our categories for this season are historical accuracy, originality, characters, prose, and vibes. I love how I say for this season as if we changed it for any other but the children's season. Anyways.
And that's the last time I was here. So
that is true.
Yeah,
it's a reminder for Diana.
And for no one else. Only Diana.
Does anyone feel passionately about kicking it off?
I can go first.
Okay.
So for historical accuracy, I'm actually going to go 3.
Okay.
Which seems low. Because I actually do think the central issue here for me is in the book, the dancing plague is only women. And to me, that's a different change than the type of change that we had in Hamnet, where there's actually no historical evidence that Hamnet died of the plague. But I think in that one, the assumption is really part of the story. There's no pretense for Maggie O'Farrell that she's saying that's what happened. I think that's not made clear enough in this book.
Interesting.
I think she wanted to write a book with that kind of message, with that kind of resonance to today, with the themes of gender and race and class. And I think it just served her story to have the dancing plague be women, and that was why she did it. Like, it started, her motivation wasn't, oh, if this happened in history, what would the fallout be? It was the reverse.
Interesting. Okay.
So
that's a very fair perspective.
I'm going to dock a point for that. Originality, 5. Great. I loved it, especially just the way that, like I said, I loved how she combined the bigger story with the personal story. Characters, 4. I liked them for the most part. They weren't like knock it out of the park for me, especially some of the side characters. Prose, 5. I thought it was excellent. I thought it was exactly what suited this type of story. And vibes, 5. I had a great time with this book. I loved it. I would highly recommend it. So that is a 4.4. And I gave this a 4.5 on Storygraph.
Wow. Okay, nicely done.
So
great.
very close,
great estimate. So is that a pod 5?
Or yes.
Okay. I think fair.
I was trying to remember if I gave one to Atmosphere.
Grace has gotten so much more liberal over the course. Well, Atmosphere you rated higher too. That was a 4.6.
Really? Okay.
According to our star calculator, 4.6.
Okay.
Diana, would you like to go next?
Sure. I have it.
Oh, amazing.
Awesome.
You can enter your own numbers.
Yeah. I think for historical accuracy, I was planning to rate it way lower, and then I kept looking things up. I was like, wait, she put a lot of thought into this. I think it's possible that in some cases she put so much thought into it that she didn't then pull things back in, where she was grounding things in research she had done, but that wasn't necessarily referenced in the book.
Like to have, that makes sense.
Like, for example, with the dancing, I had also thought that, and I had thought about the moment when Neith and Ida are faking it, and she only talks a little bit about some of the fakers, but it was like, some of the men and women also went and pretended to be dancing because they thought it would, cleanse them in some way from sin, that like giving themselves over to divine mania would cleanse them, and I think there were a lot of cases like that where even if it, all these little tidbits that were a lot more researched than it initially seemed, and also that even where things weren't necessarily 100% accurate, it served, it was a parallel to something real.
Yes.
And in a way that I was impressed by. So I think I ended up giving it a 4.5 for historical accuracy. For originality, I gave it a 5. Like I said, I thought the sort of apocalyptic tone and the plot was super interesting in the way she built it. Characters, I gave a 4 for, I think, similar reasons to Grace, where some of the side characters I didn't love, but I did overall enjoy them. Prose, a 5 for the same reason. I think I highlighted several passages in this where I was like, wow, that's really stunning. Even parts were kind of dark or sad. And vibes, I think, I don't know for vibes, whether it's, when it's...
Vibes is personal interpretation.
Yeah, I think I gave it a 4 because both times I read it, and especially the first time, I did come away with all these complicated feelings about it, of this dark... But I don't want to... I think overall I would still call this a pod 5 for me, because I think it's fundamentally so compelling and so interesting, and it's so well done, that even the ways in which it leaves you with complicated feelings, it's still fundamentally super interesting. And I think it also really aligns well with some of the things y'all like to get into on the pod.
Oh, this was a very strong pick for the pod, for sure.
I think compelling is a really good word to describe this book.
Absolutely.
All right, my turn. Historical accuracy, I'm going to give it a 4. Grace, you make a compelling argument. To me, it's still the kind of liberty I'm okay with being taken. Like, personally, I'm fine with that. I will still give it a 4 just because, like, I was a little unclear of, like, some of the... and again, I didn't need, like, to be spoon-fed some of the church structure and all of that. But that little bit of, unclarity held me back a bit. Originality, a 5 for sure. I think a weaker author would have made the dancing plague itself more prominent. I think it takes a strong author to kind of hold that back. Yeah. Almost like what we said with Atmosphere last week, like a weaker author would have had it just be chronological.
Yes.
A weaker author would have had the dancing plague be the central focus here.
Or had her join it.
Exactly. I need to pick a character where to dock about some of the stuff some of the build-up stuff I didn't love with the mother and all of that. So I'm going to dock that from characters, and I'm going to give characters a 3, just because there was some stuff that, I don't know, I didn't really get the B subplot, and the stuff with the mother I didn't think was executed well. I'm just going to put that in characters. I don't think there's a specific spot for that. Because I didn't want to dock from prose because I love the prose. That was a 5. And then vibes was also a 5. I really enjoyed reading this. I think it was compelling. As we've said, a very compelling book.
Prose and vibes on this book are high scores across the board from us.
I didn't, I have to dock something somewhere, but
not from prose, babe.
It can't be prose, it can't be vibes. It's not related to historical accuracy, originality, so sorry, characters. Anyways, that's a 4.4. I actually give this 4 stars on Storygraph, which was lower than I thought it was. This is definitely a 5 for me, though.
So, Diana, congratulations. If we do this again, you are welcome back.
Imagine
I'm honored.
We cut anyone who gives us a bad book.
Well, listen, I have been, joking with all of our guest hosts this season. I'm like, we're keeping a like a ranked list of how good you all are, but everyone's been good so far. Like,
everyone has had very specific and interesting insights. I think Diana's perspective of having read this book twice, Kelly's perspective of being a space person, Elizabeth being in the play. Like, everyone has a very unique angle they're coming in from.
exactly.
And Grace and I are just here like la-di-da, we're reading this for fun.
Well, we're certainly not reading it for money, are we, Erin?
Oh, if anything, we are losing money by reading these books.
Labor of love.
Labor of love. Thank you. That is going to be the pod's new subtitle.
So what book are we losing money on next week?
Next week is one I am particularly excited for. We are reading Death Comes as the End, which is an Agatha Christie book, which notably I've said I love mysteries. I don't know if I've ever read an Agatha Christie.
Well, we'll find out next week when you tell us all if you've read any other Agatha Christie's.
I think I maybe read one in middle school, but that was too long ago to remember the title.
Okay. Well, we'll be joined by one of our Kates next episode, my friend Kate C., who is not the Kate that knows Kelly.
Different Kate.
Yeah.
Non-book club Kate, I would assume.
Non-book club Kate.
Okay.
So I'll think of a better descriptor for her by then.
Okay.
But in the meantime, you can be following us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at @fiberflop_pod. And don't forget to go check out our Storygraph reading challenge and try and figure out what book Erin is reading right now.
Actually, frankly, Grace, it's not you can be following us, it's you should be following us.
You must be following us.
Be. Required following. Yes, but definitely join that Storygraph reading challenge. If you have any other thoughts on what we should be reading, it's about that time where we're starting to probably think about season 6 sooner rather than later.
That's a scary thought.
Very scary thought. Fill out that recommendation form in our bio or shoot us an email at fiberfloppodcast@gmail.com. And until next time, Diana, do you want to sign us off?
Happy reading.
Happy reading.
Bye.